Welcome back to the Rebuilt Parish podcast. On today's episode, we've got Tim Glemkowski from Amazing Parish, joined by Tom Corcoran as well. In this episode, you're going to hear about Tim's new white paper that he wrote. You're going to hear about his involvement with the Eucharistic Congress, and you're going to get to hear some authentic storytelling. I can't wait for you to join us. We'll see you inside the episode. Well, hi there, Tim. Hey, Tom, thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's so
Tim,
good to be
this
on.
is exciting. You and I have never gotten to meet before. You and Tom have only met briefly. So for those who might not know who you are yet, could you share a bit about your own story and then share a little bit about your role with Amazing Parish?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So I grew up outside of Chicago and had a big conversion when I was 18. Met Jesus personally. And in college, I really started to discern a calling to ministry. And a lot of it was connected even at the time to the renewal of the church. St. Francis is a big, personal inspiration of mine, kind of a hero saint, and, rebuild my church were the words he heard from our Lord on the San Damiano cross that he initially misinterpreted, building a physical structure, and then realized that he was called to lead this movement, the Franciscans, who with the Dominicans, the Mendicant sort of revolution would be so kind of powerfully renewing in the church in the 13th century. So that's looked at like a lot of different ways for me, but I got involved in parish ministry in 2015 because there was a lot of energy at the time, some great books out, Rebuilt being one of them, and Divine Renovation and Amazing Parish was coming, and others that were really starting to try to articulate this principle of it doesn't have to be that all of the great kind of missionary energy of the church and the places that people are meeting Jesus personally and having conversions is sort of out there in the apostolates or in a great campus ministry program or in a religious, kind of order or movement, but that really the normative expression of the church, even in its kind of structural institutional life, which parishes and dioceses are, itself has to be reoriented for mission. It really lit me up. So since then, I've done a lot of different, God has called me to different things in a continual way in the church, and including most recently before Amazing Parish, I led the National Eucharistic Revival project for the U.S. bishops. But it's always had that through line of how do we help the entire church to move to mission, which I don't think is, in some ways, it's not like just because that's like my ideology. It's, I think for me, born very much so out of, I think every person, the only answer to every question and longing of their hearts is Jesus Christ. And I think the Catholic Church has been sent to invite people to that relationship with this person. And if we're bad at that, and it's like the only thing we're supposed to do, then that's an occasion for us of sincere repentance and wrestling and conversion in our thoughts and our actions. And so that's, the Amazing Parish had, for 13 years been doing this kind of work in parishes. And as I was coming out of the Eucharistic Revival project, the board reached out to me to help usher it into its next season, which has been a real gift. So I've been there just a little under 2 years now, and really beautiful, work, kind of coaching pastors and parish leaders toward that mindset, and then creating the system structures and processes in order to actually do that. So it's great to be on mission with Rebuilt for, someone asked me the other day, they said, they were talking about, they were saying something great that they had heard at the Rebuilt conference. And they said to me, oh, sorry, I know that's one of your competitors. And I said, we have the same boss. So I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure that competitor is the word for it. So good to be on mission with you all.
Yeah, Tim, I appreciate you saying that, because it is the question like we get, like, well, who are your competitors? I'm like, I don't like to talk about it like that. My competitor is the enemy, is the evil.
Yeah, right. The world, the flesh, the devil.
Exactly. There you go. And maybe that's a great way I'll start answering that next time. The world, the flesh, the devil. But yeah, who are in our space, who are our ministry space? Yes. And so I appreciate you just bringing that up. Before you get to a more Amazing Parish stuff, and I know we're talking, I'm just curious, and maybe people want to hear, the National Eucharistic Congress, I mean, you gave, I'm sure, years to that. Obviously we could spend probably whole podcast on this, but any thoughts of what that did and accomplished that you hoped it would, or what blessings you thought have flown, that's not the right word, have flowed out of that? I would just be interested to hear that.
Yeah, it's always hard for me to talk about, but I think some of the freedom I feel in doing so is just that we felt like we were along for a ride. Like I think everyone who was really involved with it closely had this very strong feeling, because there was a lot of pushback against the initiative. And we just kind of had this feeling the whole time of like, but I think Jesus wants this. And we're not totally sure why, but I think he's going to do something in the church that's sort of the sum is, or what is it? Sum is greater than the parts, like kind of thing. And I think that's proven to be the case. Like, I think there's certainly not the only thing, but a powerful way that the church responded to, I think, God's desire for revival in the church and in the world right now is, for 3 years, the church just said, we want to come closer to your heart. And we want to put, when I'm lifted up, I'll draw all men and women myself, right? And so I think there was a kind of a powerful spiritual action on behalf of the church to say, Lord, we've been fishing all night and we've caught nothing, and we just need you. And especially with our division and brokenness coming out of the COVID years and the increasing divisions in our country and all those different things, I think it was a very beautiful way for the bishops to call the people of God to respond. And I do think that's contributed to in some small way, whatever way it has, to the fruitfulness that the church is seeing in a way that I think is instructive for, seek ye first, right? And all these things will be added to you. It should be instructive to all of us in our leadership, which is, renewal at the end of the day is not going to come about because we have all the right best practices. It's going to come when those, we need to be excellent at everything we do, and clarity around how we do that is critical. None of it will work if it isn't flowing from the hearts of people who are just broken open and surrendered completely to God. And I think that's the Eucharistic form of mission and ministry. And I think that really, in some ways, that project, that's what it represented to me personally, and I think also to the church. So yeah, it's one of those things. I think I'll spend my lifetime unpacking it to some degree, because it in some ways it shifted and broke a lot of the things I thought I knew about what it meant to lead and inaugurate renewal. And I don't know if I'll ever be quite there in articulating it.
Yeah, that's another podcast there. I would love to hear more about that.
Let's do it. I'm writing a doctoral. I went back now to school, and I'm doing my PhD finally, and I'm writing my doctoral thesis on that. Well, on how does the church cooperate with the renewing action of the Holy Spirit because of this experience? It sort of shook me up so much that I'm like, I just want to read everything there is to read about this, because I don't know how to make sense of it otherwise.
Right. That's the best stuff's going to come out of that personal experience and what you had. So yeah, I'm interested in learning more about that when the time is right.
You recently wrote a white paper called Rebuild My Church, A Call for Renewal. So of course we loved that title because it aligns so much with what we've been talking about, and, kind of sounds like rebuilt, which is exciting. But what prompted you to write this now? And what were you seeing in the church that made this feel so urgent?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think, one of the purposes for this document is, I do think there's a renewed energy and interest in parish renewal. I think it really lost some steam during COVID, because everyone, when you're just trying to survive, you're just like, how do we keep our doors open and comply with the government or whatever, that sort of limited, I think, a lot of people's scope and focus. And I think there is a moment for a renewed call to the church to say, hey, this project is a generational project. We didn't just figure this all out in the 10 years after Evangelii Gaudium. We got to keep going. And so that galvanizing call was important to us, sort of the prophetic part of it. I think additionally, reminding people that it's simple, the principles aren't altogether complicated. And then personally for Amazing Parish, just to kind of pull back the veil, what this was a helpful exercise for, it almost flowed out of an internal exercise for us, which was Amazing Parish is, very similar, I think, to the Franciscans or Dominicans or other religious orders that had a call and a charism put in it by God to help the church in a particular way in a particular time, and then just kind of did that mission for 12 years and didn't always have time to stop and sit back and reflect on, how do we articulate though what we, who we are? And so we're getting a lot of invitations to do different things and new things. And we almost needed a guiding criteria of because I'm a firm believer in, if you do things according to your charism, God will bless them, because you have to go back to the original calling in some ways, to continue to move forward. And so defining that as almost like this is the charism of Amazing Parish, or the things that there's a ton of stuff that's important for the renewal of the church. This is the row, the oar that we've been uniquely called to row, was actually like a critical exercise, kind of like how Benedict at some point has to write a rule of life, right? Or, orders do this at a certain point. It was kind of a similar exercise for us in some ways, in a way that's been very useful for us to discern, like, what we're being called to grow and expand into.
So what did that help you do? Because I think that's very important for parish leaders too. We get pulled into different things, a million different things, and there's all these different ministries that can pop up and happen. And to say, here's our focus, at Rebuilt, we try to say these anchors of weekend experience, clear discipleship path, grow wider, build layers of leaders, and try to stay on that. But even at Rebuilt, I feel the pull sometimes at different things or what's in our lane. So I don't know, what are some of the things you decide, hey, that's not us, and this is our lane? And can you talk about that process a little more, Tim? That'd be
Yeah. So I mean, it looks different ways and in different times. I think right now, I agree with you. People don't realize, like, everyone has the image that the great leader is like John Paul II, who is like this kind of prophetic, bold, visionary voice who can just, like, by force of personality and new initiatives and writing, just kind of like, flip the earth on its head. And most good leaders are actually more like Pope Leo, which is like a lot of clarity around what's important to you, and then being willing to say yeses, but more no's than yeses according to that clarity, And I think that's important for us to remember, is like, I see leaders do this a lot where they're like, I need to shake things up. Things aren't going that well. And so they just want to change something for the sake of changing something, for the sake of like agitating the system or doing something new. And sometimes it can create complexity that doesn't have to exist. And organizations trend toward complexity over time, Absolutely. If not, right? So I think, for our parishes, like, you're going to make more change by just developing clarity around who you're called to be, and then saying like no to 90% of things, than you are by coming up with, everyone wants to be the next Steve Jobs, right? Like this brilliant idea that just like changes the world and no one's ever thought of this before. And typically fruitfulness is found instead in quiet faithfulness, I think, of.
Our 2025 Rebuilt Conference was beyond all that we could ask or imagine. There were over 700 attendees from around the globe who came together to be inspired, encouraged, and equipped. This conference was created for parish leaders and diocese teams who are ready to transform and renew their communities. Did you join us? Did you learn new ideas, ways to strengthen your mission? Are you ready to join again or for the first time? Save the date. May 2nd through May 4th, 2027, the Rebuilt Conference is returning to Timonium, Maryland. This gathering is more than a conference. It is an opportunity to come together with pastors and parish leaders from around the world who are committed to building healthy, growing, mission-driven parishes. For now, save the date, May 2nd to May 4th, 2027, at Church of the Nativity in Timonium, Maryland. Details and registration will be coming in months ahead, so stay tuned. We cannot wait to welcome you.
Well, if you go to Steve Jobs, I think there's a famous, I might get this story wrong, but I'll get it somewhat right, of there's all this complexity and confusion about the computers they should build and all this. He's like, look, it's really simple. And he has like, that we have the personal computer and we got for business, corporations. And then we had like 3 different products for each. And he's like, it's that simple.
This is right.
So, and that's what Steve Jobs could do. He could simplify, and then out of the simplicity came growth. And so I think, it's a great point. How do we keep simplifying? And again, I know we're struggling at times with this because I feel like we have so much we can offer, but where is it that the real fruit is, and trying to stay focused on that. So
and we see other people having success with certain things, so we're like, oh, well, we should do more of that then, like we're going to see 800 Hallow imitations and then over the next 10 years, like it's just, this is our temptation in the kingdom, is just to like, what's working and how do we chase that down, instead of just saying, who has God called us to be and how do we stay faithful to that? And so for us, like some of the things we've said no to, we just did this. It was funny because we've talked about things we are being called to say yes to. And then we made a list of those things, like 10 things. And then we started thinking and like working on those things and thinking and praying about it more. And then we cut like 7 of those things because we were like, even those were like we kind of wanted one of the complicated areas for us always. I don't know if you feel the same way. This is like inside baseball. If you want to know, like, these renewal, but like we've struggled with seminaries, right? Like,
oh, it's interesting. Go ahead. Yeah. Now I'm really, you got my curiosity right now.
Because we get asked to do, I'm sure you do as well. We get asked to do stuff with seminaries all the time. And it feels so important because you're like, we have to give them a perspective for the vocation they're getting into in a way that would guide their formation, get them excited, and then, start the kind of learning and challenging process now. At the same time, they're not in the seat. And so they have no context for the things you're teaching them. So they think it's just like corporate, speak. And so and we don't think like a course is the way to go. Like we've been asked to make like seminary leadership courses and we're like, I don't know if that's the thing. And so it's this constant tension of like, what would really, for us, we have 3 guiding principles, which is deeply known. So we have like everything we do, we want to be able to know very deeply the contexts and the personalities and problems of the leaders we're serving. Move the needle, which is everything we want to do. We actually want it to move the needle in the church, not just be like a nice thing to do. And then the last one is simple and excellent. So, Apple, not PC. We want everything we do to be simple and excellent and not too many things. And we just can't find that seminary thing that is actually like fits those 3 criteria for us. But maybe you've all unlocked it. I don't know yourselves.
Yeah, but we've just started some of the conversations, but I've just been more, I want to get this, as a sort of startup, I kind of have that startup mentality, and that was just reach parishes. And now I'm 52. I think I got 20 years to make a difference in the church and then, of working. And I think, okay, we got to plant some, when's the best time to plant an oak tree is right now, right? Or 50 years ago was the best time, but when's the next time right now? So in trying to plant some seeds and do that, but I haven't had, sounds like you've had some bigger conversations about that. We've just started that conversation. So, but yeah, the idea though I've thought of is there's a right window for pastors and when to hit them, right? Because if you hit them to a certain point, people have to know, and this is our story. I know enough to know I don't know what I'm doing, or I need help. Right.
That's it. And you need to have felt the pain of that.
You probably don't know that. Right.
Yeah. It needs to have hurt a little bit. Like in my own humbling experiences of leadership is what's made me most open to new ideas or to like, being formed and challenged. And so, yeah, if you've never been out of a classroom and you've never actually, you don't know what it's like, you just think, oh, I know what to do if I just do this, this, and this. And people, I think everyone, when they haven't been in the seat of a leader before, just thinks everyone else is stupid and doing it wrong. Do you know what I mean? Like I was this way. 100%,
I'm like, 100%.
Oh, it's so easy. You just do this, this, and this, and everyone's just got it wrong. And you got your red pen, right? And you're just kind of like telling everyone how to run the universe. And then you get there and you realize, oh, change is actually super hard. And I'm not actually good at this. And, and then you're willing to be formed. So it's, we're having the same, if you figure it out, let me know. But we have certainly not figured it out yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, I just wrote a blog about that second chair versus first chair leader too. And it's like, even when you're in the first chair, it's a lot different. And I remember, and that's partly our stories though, which is the good. I remember starting in youth ministry at Nativity, and I was 24, 25-year-old kid. I knew nothing, but I probably thought I knew a lot. And then just going to the chapel, driving to my knees like, Lord, I have no idea what I'm doing. And that's the value of it. And then of being frustrated, I'm like, okay, things aren't changing and growing, and then being open to ideas. But you have to kind of a little bit get to that point, as you're saying. So
it's changed the way I approach, like, on Twitter or whatever. Everyone's always like, these politicians, like all they have to do is this, or like bishops, people do, well, if he just did this, it would all be okay. And running something like the Congress, my assumption now is, they know and are seeing things that you have no context for, and exactly. they can't tell you. They're not like, for some reason they're not allowed to tell you. But there's like, it's just changed everything for me. Once you're actually, like you said, first chair. I've done this with our team, which I think is a good exercise even for pastors, parishes to remember. Is like, I've done exercises with our team to help them understand my role and how I actually view my role as CEO or executive director, because it's actually important for them to. Otherwise, they'll get frustrated. Like, why isn't Tim moving fast enough here? And why is he moving too fast over here? And so I'm like, here's the 3 things I'm doing all the time in these 12 areas, and it's relationships and vision and scanning for problems. And it was helpful, I think, for them to be like, oh, okay. That's why. So some of those, the vulnerability there, I think can be useful, but I don't know how we got off on this track. I guess I got us there.
No, it's all good.
It's always my fault.
I can bring us back.
I'll let Melissa get us back on track. But Sounds like we need to get. It sounds like we need to get a beer though.
We'll have to get the two of you together.
Yeah.
So Tim, when I was reading this white paper, something that stuck out to me that I would love for us to talk about is you had mentioned that a diocese in the Midwest had done this massive marketing campaign encouraging people to come back to church. And they had massive success at first, where 25%, they saw almost a 25% increase in people coming to Mass. But then can you talk about what happened next and why?
Yeah, I think, so the story for us was this was mid 2000s, kind of, first half of, the 2010s, I'm sorry. And, I think there was a really well-intentioned kind of emphasis at the time on declining numbers in the church, baptisms and Mass attendance. And so initiatives that were focused just on recruitment effectively, and sometimes those aren't bad. Like there's this initiative now that the Archdiocese of Denver did that's called by name about recruiting seminarians and priests. And it's actually super effective. Like it's a really good thing to just tap guys on the shoulder and say, have you thought about joining the seminary? And if you do that for a lot of them, more of them will join the seminary. This was, more about, getting people to kind of come back to Mass. But, I think what maybe was missing, and I think, one of the things I'm convicted about is like, everything has its place in the kingdom. There's a, not everything has to be a fork. Some things are spoons. And so this initiative was probably very good at recruitment. What the parishes and the diocese probably forgot was once they come into our parish, they're going to encounter still, no one's going to, care that they're there and welcome them. They're not going to hear the gospel preached. They're not going to experience a liturgy that's transcendent and beautiful, but also brings them to a place of deep prayer and personal encounter. And, everything they left. And so
you remember why they left.
Right. They're like, oh yeah. It's like, yeah, you run into an old girlfriend or something and you're like, oh yeah, this is why this didn't work out. I don't know what the analogy would be, but so that's, it's just a good, I think, reminder that we want to put in front of people of like, we can't address symptoms. We have to address the sources of some of these things, which is, the evangelizing mission of the church. If people become disciples, if they are participating in a community that is a place that they're experiencing life to the full, if they're going on mission themselves, all of those things have been shown by studies to retain people in the faith. And so what happened to end the story is their Mass attendance jumped by like 100,000 that year or something crazy. It was some massive jump. And then they did the study again the next year and all 100,000, it was back to the baseline, whatever it was before. And that's, it just speaks to, if we can't figure out the parish thing, we're not going to be able to renew the church.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Way, that they remembered all of the reasons that they left. They weren't feeling welcome. They weren't getting a well done liturgy. So, and you also talk about in the paper that the renewal has to happen in the parish. So why is the parish still that primary place where the transformation has to take root? And what do the parishes need to be doing to retain those people?
Yeah, I think, the parish is hard, right? It's difficult to renew parishes and it's one by one. It's island hopping. You can't there is no, copy paste, mass produce thing that can just it's every leader has to drive that renewal for their particular community because these are communities of people. And so people, I think, can get frustrated or tired of the parish and want to say, it's not as necessary as it once was. The fact that Pope Francis had to say in Evangelii Gaudium, the parish is not an outdated institution speaks to, people think that, he's responding to something. And so, the reason is, it's, one, we'd be strategically so stupid to just ignore parishes. And we have a parish system in the United States of America that has 17,000 potential outposts of the church's mission. To just ignore that and be let's just kind of go somewhere else is crazy, first of all. Second of all, there's theological reasons. The Catholic Church is in some ways and has always been a church of the local church, right? Paul's writing letters to Ephesus and to the Ephesians and to Corinth and the Corinth. We've from the very beginning been this kind of local church. And then three, I think, practically most people you and I know, right? We know every app that's out there and, all the great resources and ways to plug into our faith. And we have I have community with Catholics around the world, because of the work I've gotten to do. We forget then as insiders, most people's entire experience of the faith, their only reference point for what the Catholic Church is, they couldn't even tell you. I bet 80% of Catholics couldn't even tell you the name of their bishop. You know what I mean? Let alone, who's getting this, diocese over here. And their entire experience of the faith is mediated through the local parish, and the bulletin is the only way to communicate with them. And you know what I mean? Like we are still such a decentralized religion, which is candidly part of our strength. It's why we're so sticky and resilient as a church. But it also means then that if we want to see a missionary church, you're not going to see it until you have a tipping point of parishes who are actually operating missionally, which I think is, I don't know, Tom, if you feel the same way, but I'd say over 15 years, it's more than it was then. It's not 100%, but it's getting better.
The topic of money is hard, and we generally shy away from speaking about it. That said, we need money to run a parish. One of the biggest challenges we hear from pastors when it comes to money isn't just about their finances. It's about how to form people who truly understand why they give. Because financial stewardship in a parish isn't really about budgets or payroll or accounts payable. It's about discipleship. That's why we created the Finance and Stewardship Equip course. At Rebuild Parish, we've seen that when people engage in the parish and grow deeper in their faith, generosity follows, not out of obligation, but as an act of worship. This Equip course helps you move beyond simply asking for financial support and instead build a culture where your parishioners see themselves as part of your mission, where giving becomes a response to what God is doing in their lives. In this course, you'll learn how to communicate vision, change hearts, and create systems that support long-term growth. You'll learn that a parish does not raise money, it raises givers. If you're ready to lead your parish with clarity and confidence in this critical area, head to rebuildparish.com/equip and check out the Finance and Stewardship Equip course. Because when disciples grow, generosity follows.
Yeah, that's hard. It's hard for me to give an answer a little bit like the way you said about the Eucharistic Congress, because I'm so deep into the weeds that it's hard to say. I know our experience at Nativity, and I know we're in a better place than we were, obviously, and that's the story we're trying to share. Yeah, and I guess I always do feel the potential. And as you're saying, I think all church is local. And at the end of the day, what people need right now, and this is our time and our opportunity, is people are hungering for community. I think a lot of people maybe, there's a New York Times thing about 18 to 35-year-olds. Why they come into church? Because they're alone and they're lonely. And, this thing can't only fill you so much, right? And we need that human connection. And that should be what we are best at as a church, right? We are a reflection of the Trinity, who is communion, God himself, who is communion. So I appreciate you, Tim, saying, yeah, I think it is getting better. I think I get a little bit too much in the weeds to I haven't actually asked that question. So it's a great question. I hope you're right. And
the needle has moved.
I don't make that so. Yeah.
To what extent? I'm not sure, and I think it's easy. I think I get, myself pretty cynical still sometimes because I see so many of the problems too. Or you talk to some, leaders and you're just like, what are you even like? How are you still there? Kind of thing. Yeah. But I do think, even for the last 10 years, we've had so much conversation about how to make the church more digitally effective. And I think we're there, I think there's a lot of good that people can find as they're searching online. Now the entire world is rushing to analog experiences. Concert tickets is the hardest thing to find today because everybody wants something that's not just mediated through AI slop. And so it's just a reminder of we have to, and this is, I don't get annoyed, or some people get really frustrated with Catholic Inc. or, Catholic celebrities, or, how pervasive that is in our culture. I think they probably, first of all, I think they've always existed. I think it was St. Jerome said about St. Augustine. I don't know if he was complaining or, but he said, he's known by every Catholic the world around. Clear, we've had Catholic celebrities since the beginning. When Paul showed up, they knew who he was in certain local churches. They had heard of Paul. At the same time, the issue is that if for multiple successive generations, they think that impact equates to how known you are online, that's going to be one of the most dangerous things, because our pastors are going to fall prey to it. They're going to think that my worth as a priest is not just the transformation I brought to this parish, but how much then my homilies got watched online or my Instagram got followed online. Like it's never going to be enough but that's, we're going to find ourselves very much at odds with the thinking of God. I think if we forget how much many of us as individual Catholics are called to just be part of and participate in and transform a local community, and how much for many leaders that's like what they're called to primarily focus on, and not on breadth of impact.
But let me ask you this question, Tim, like, because I think that's a valid concern. Somewhat my concern is, and it comes out of ambition. I'd probably say which is true. And I think all of us can fall into that, like value and worth. And I still, I think we all wrestle with that. If you're a leader, if you have ambition, you wrestle with that. And that's something, my point is sometimes the concern is like, there's not enough ambition, and maybe it needs to be redirected into holy ways and into the life of a church. And that was certainly what was incredible to Father Michael and I, that there were, and usually really in the evangelical world, these pastors getting up and saying you are part of the most important work in the world. That this is where the work God wants to do in the world is through the local church, and you get to be on the forefront of that, and hold on to that as valuable, and then pour your ambition in a holy way into that and to reaching people. I guess my flip side is sometimes I worry there's not enough of that ambition. Like it's the lukewarmness. It's a settling place. So I was just going to ask this question, and I know we don't have a ton more time, but because I've been asked, like, how many pastors do you think, and this is a little inside baseball too, maybe, but really want to grow their churches? And the problem is more, look, focus that ambition in a holy way versus, hey, I'm just ratting out my time and I'm done. I don't know. Sorry to.
Yeah. No, it's a good
question, but I'm just curious how you answer that question, because it's the conversation we have. And
the philosophical principle too, I actually got in an argument with some friends about this the other day, because they were talking about how, their ambition was bad and they need to just be like, all I should be focused on as a Catholic man is like, just being a dutiful spouse and a dutiful dad. And I'm like, no, you can't not be that. Like there's an unhealthy
power can accomplish more than we can ask and imagine. Like, anyway, sorry.
But there should be an ambition for God and his kingdom, and an ambition for hearing in my heart, like the plan God has for my life, and sort of never settling and God, like further up and further in. So I actually do think we're running into like an anti-magnanimity, false humility in the church today in general, which I think is actually a problem. Yeah, percentage wise, I do still tend to always talk about the thirds. 1/3 of pastors are really trying to drive. Maybe some of them are just burned out or overwhelmed or tired. 1/3 are typically, maybe a little bit checked out, and then 1/3 can kind of go either way. I that might be a little bit. There's part of me that wanted to say 10% as soon as you said it, which might, so maybe it's a little generous, but I think overall, if I even think about, particular dioceses, I'm like, yeah, it's probably like a third still. But if we capture that leading third, I'm pretty still convinced the middle third will come, because it'll just be, this is how we do things. And there's going to be, if you had even a third of the parishes in the United States of America, which would be what, 3,500 or something, really operating missionally and really just, ambitious for God and his kingdom, we would be, most dioceses that are really healthy, if you look at it, a lot of the fruit has come from like 3 places. Like even here in Denver, that's like so amazing. It's like, a lot of the good stuff that happened in the 90s was like these 3 or 4 parishes, and now it's spread from there. And so it doesn't take much to grow, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. And then, maybe for any parish leaders listening to this, again, it is, that's a real healthy thing. We sometimes see the whole elephant, the big thing. We want to renew 17,000 parishes. Okay, let's start smaller and focus there, and shrink the change, as they talk about in Switch, How to Change a Change's Heart, but then Chip Heath, great book on change management. But anyway, I think just shrinking that change, and even for a parish leader listening today, like you think of the whole parish and change, get small groups started, get this ministry growing and healthy. We would work on your weekend homily and make that great, and start the small changes. that's where we, shrink that change back down. And I like the way and I think we need at Rebuild a little more conversation on, how many are we really changing and transforming, and to know there'll be a ripple effect. So anyway, sorry to throw that question out, but it's good.
No, I know we're at time, but I just appreciate so much you having me on. And, we're just, you and your mission and Rebuild are just in our prayers. And thank you. Yeah. Again, on behalf of someone who was still just working at a high school and working in parishes the first time I read Rebuilt, like I think, people, you, Sherry, Waddell, I think some of these OGs who really just started this conversation in the church, need more credit at this point for how much incredible prophetic articulation there was to say, this is possible, and this is, it can actually be this way in a Catholic context. And we just all owe you a debt of gratitude. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, Tim.
I think we definitely have to have Tim on again.
What's gone? We do have to have you on again. There's a lot of
Hey, that's our. Yeah, I'm happy to what's it like? SNL has recurring, hosts. That's what I'll do.
I was going to say too. Sorry, Tim's got a radio show, and Tim, I don't remember your voice, but now I'm like, man, Tim's got a voice for radio. So I'm on Relevant Radio, right? So,
on Relevant Radio, 11:30 Mountain, 12:30 Central, every day. The Tim Glemkowski Show. It's less focused on renewal in the church. It's kind of more, how do we sanctify the ordinary? How do we, engage the world, and great conversations with different people. It's been fun to get to do and kind of learn a little bit more. People, I thought you were going to say, people say to me all the time that my voice, I sound like Bishop Barron. That's the one I get. People are like, who you sound like? And I'm like, Bishop Barron. We're both from Chicago, is I think what it is.
Yeah. I hear it now, but you do have a great radio voice. So.
Thank you. I'm working on it for the show. I'm a lot of
Tim,
honey teas now.
We'll have to have that link where people can listen to you on your radio show. Can you also share, how can they find the white paper?
Yeah, so amazingparish.org/rebuild is the but you'll see it at the top too under free resources. We also have the Houston Summit coming up August 3rd through 5th, 2026. People can join for to hear about, kind of how to live as be a healthy and effective and fruitful parish or school. We have some schools coming now because they're the principles are the same, so diocese, different apostolates. We're actually coaching a few apostolates now just because they've reached out about how do we become healthy so we can be effective on our mission. So those are some of the ways God is stretching our mission now. And you always feel free to reach out, team@amazingparish.org. We monitor that inbox constantly, and we have a lot of just rolling conversations with folks about how, what God's doing.
We'll have all
mission.
of those links in the show notes for anyone who's listening. Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining us. We can't wait to have you back on.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, and you'll be in my prayers until then.
Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Jen.